A new episode of Story of Success in which we interview prominent Egyptian figures. We'll be back after the break with our guests, so stay with us. Today I'm continuing my interview with a prominent Egyptian figure in the field of civil engineering, especially in terms of the construction of roads and highways. He's also a professor of engineering at the Faculty of Civil Engineering, Mansoura University. He works at several international construction companies, as well as also he was the youngest vice president of a construction company. Today I'm happy to continue my interview with engineer Dr. Ala Mahmoud. Good afternoon and welcome
back.
Welcome back. Well, in the previous episode we talked about a lot of things. We talked about why you chose to study civil engineering. We talked also about your master's degree, your PhD degree, your trip to Libya. We've talked about education, and because you've done private universities, public universities, and you've done abroad as well. So we discussed some of these points. Now we're catching up with what we were saying, and I'd like to ask you about some of the major projects you took part in as a quality control supervisor. So would you tell us about that, please, and tell us more about quality control in Egypt?
Well, the quality control concept, I believe that is the missing ethic in our society. In engineering, as well as in maybe in all our branches of engineering. When I joined the Faculty of Engineering as a quality control engineer in Scientific Research Center, this center actually is founded in the Faculty of Engineering to be a supervisor of quality control of all the projects in the Middle Delta of Egypt. And due to its success, it extended to most of the national projects or some of the important projects in the national level. One of the most important and national projects that we are take care about is the coastal road. You know, the coastal road or the coastal highway is more than 1,000 kilometers. It's extending from Marsa Matruh or Saloum and up to maybe Rafah or Sinai. When I involved in this work, we are responsible about the quality control of the middle sector. It's extended about 140 kilometers between Marsa Matruh and Alexandria. And I believe this was the most you can say the most accurate work have been done in this part of the road.
The road, yes.
Because, as I told you, we are following the quality control assurance and the quality control principles in execution of this work. As I mentioned earlier, the investment in the road construction is a very big investment. So if you spend a little bit more on quality control, you will save more in the long term, in the long run. Because the average, as it's known, the average design life of the road in general, it's about 20 years. So to assure that the road work will continue on the same performance level along this design life, it must be executed according to the specifications. And that's actually what the quality control units be assured of that.
I know that it's not really your specialty, but since you're dealing with roads, I'd like to know how come in Egypt, like Egypt is one of the highest rates in terms of road accidents. Is it because of the way our roads are set sometimes? Because you'd find sometimes like the gutters are not in their proper place, or the artificial bumps are not set properly, or in addition, of course, to our own conduct. Is it a combination of both, or is it just the driver's conduct more?
Actually, it's a very complicated problem. And you know, Egypt is the second country in the world in accidents. Not in accidents rate, but in the dead people coming out of the accidents. So you can say it's a combination between mistakes of the users of the way, of the roads, and the specification of the roads itself. In many last decades, but the specification of the roads is not arising as an important issue in executing the roads, because unfortunately in Egypt the roads is not has specific authority that are responsible for. Sometimes you can, if something happened to the road, you must research to whom this road belongs to. Sometimes it belongs to the national authority of the highways. Sometimes it belongs to the government. Sometimes to the small the small roads or local roads for the villages and the municipalities or something like that. So different specifications that applied in each branch of these authorities is making this difference in performance. So of course we have you can say the culture, the society culture of dealing with the traffic restrictions or the traffic regulations, it's not applied in the right way. For example, when I was in UAE or in Europe, when you are applying for getting a driving license, it's something like, I remember when I was in UAE and to get my first license of driving license in the Abu Dhabi, when I get this license, they told me that, good news, you have a license of driving license. It's same like PhD. It's equivalent to the PhD. If you get a license, something like that, you got another PhD, because it's very hard and it's very complicated to get this license. Here, I believe that it's so easy to get this license. Sometimes, in some decades, in some years, I know somebody that got a driving license in Egypt during his stay outside the Egypt.
Indeed, Doctor. And another project I'd like to ask you about is the one involved with the highway by Terrat al-Salam, and especially for dealing with the canals, because usually we hear a lot about buses or minibuses going into the canals. Now, are there usually certain specifications when you're going to construct a road by a canal, and do we abide that or not in Egypt?
Yes, that's a good question. We have in road constructions, we have two concepts. The first is the geometric design, what's called the geometric design, which is concerning with the dimensions and the alignment of the highway, even if either it's parallel to the waterway or in the on the normal in the desert or something like that. The other is the construction design or the design of the construction specification of design. The geometric is related to how much the width of the roadway, how much the velocity is permitted to run on the roadway, the dimension, the different dimension of the roadway, and so on. And the other thing is the construction criteria of this. how much the loads and number of cars or the vehicles or the trucks that will pass on the road, and so how much the thickness of different layers of these roads to accommodate these loads. When we are constructing a road along with a waterway like Tarat Salam, we must take into consideration all these characteristics, all these factors. And I believe also in the water in the roads that adjacent to Tarat Salam is we are fulfilling the all requirements that needed to be put in practical in designing and executing the roadway.
You also mentioned that you've been to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi, to the United Arab Emirates. And how was your experience there? And tell me more, what did you do there?
Actually, this was a very important stage of my life. I went there and after I got my master degree. By that time, there was you can see international competition for joining this company. I was working in the international company, international consult, that working in the Middle East, and the project was in Abu Dhabi. Actually, the project was the extension to Abu Dhabi, something like, if we want to simulate it, something like New Cairo, for example, to the Cairo. It's an area called Shamkha. That was the extension of Abu Dhabi. You can imagine that I remember that the first day we are transferred to the site, it was maybe in June or July.
That's hot.
The degree is more than 42 degree, and you can't see nothing but desert and sky. And we have been told that this is the site of the project. You have only 18 months just to transform this area from these deserts to be a part of Abu Dhabi. And you know what? And you know Abu Dhabi how much the development there. So it was a very from approximately zero from nothing, no life, from point of no life, to transfer it to a new community with more than 300 villas, with all these infrastructures and services, the roads, all the required activities that needs to be for these communities to be live.
That must have been quite challenging, and now that's a rough terrain as well. So you had to deal with a rough terrain.
Yes, of course, yes. I believe that also. I remember that I was the only Egyptian engineer by that time in the project. We are more than 17. I was leading a team with 17 engineers from different countries around the world. Philippines, India, Pakistan, and many countries also. But we have only one target, and this is what I have learned from these projects: how to be a good manager, how to forget about all your religion, your nationality, and make one target to you. Just you want to finish your work on the time.
You also mentioned that you've been to Great Britain or England, so would you tell me about that trip?
Yes, that was my first trip to Europe, and was also my old dream. I was dreaming to, you can say, envision Europe, and I decided to do that starting from England. It's very hard, very difficult when I decided to go there to get a visa, to get a permission to get into England. As I mentioned earlier, it was my first conference. I prepared a paper, a scientific paper or academic paper in the same field of highway engineering, and I sent it to the conference board. After maybe 2-3 weeks of reviewing, of course, all the conferences has what's called a peer review. They review it and accept it, and they sent me. I believe that it was one of my happiest day in my life, that when I get the acceptance letter that my paper has been accepted, and based on that I get a permission or a visa to go there. When I go to England, I spend more than 2 or 3 weeks in advance to read about England, how to move there, how to which parts of London, exactly which part is interesting, what areas should I go to, what museums I have to go, and so on. It was a very interesting trip.
How did you find the layout of the city? As an engineer, you must have had the eye to look around.
Yes.
And to what extent the way they organize their traffic and roads are different from ours?
Actually, England, one of the best country all over the world in alignment or planning the internal network of the transportation. You know, they have the first or the oldest train network in the world. Egypt is the second. So I believe that I remember that I spent more than out of 3 weeks I spent there, more than 1.5 weeks just to try all the types of the modes of transportations, starting from taxi to buses to and the trains and the metros, and it was very interesting. And they are professionals in planning their network.
Which other countries you really enjoyed, whether on a personal level or a professional level, that you'd like to talk to us about?
Actually, when I visit Paris, that was in the last year, it was very interesting city, and very, you can say, civilized city. It's very, very attractive for me. And I wish I spent my rest of life in this city. But after that, I had a conference in Warsaw, in Poland. And when I believe that when I visit Warsaw, I fall in love with it. It's very, very interesting. It's a very, very interesting city you can live in. Something like Alexandria in the last century. When I saw it in the TV programs, in all TV programs, and TV films, I felt it's very calm, and the people there is very cute. And the only problem that you have faced is that most of the Polish people didn't talk in English. They are talking in local language, so it's very hard to contact with them. But in terms of cleanness and attraction, it's a very interesting city.
Doctor, do you have a special award that really is the best award or has a special place in your heart?
I remember, as I mentioned earlier, when I go to England for my first conference, and I submit my academic paper. Usually, after in the conferences, in the academic conference, made some survey for the attendees,
like
to the best papers. Yeah, I got the best paper in this conference. It was the first and the nearest prize to my heart.
Who's your role model?
I believe I have two role models. One is the Professor Hazem Sar, which was my first professor, and he is the one who adopted me from my graduation and made me fall in love in the highway engineering. He was my leader in the scientific center, and he is my first guide to me to the practical work of highway engineering. I follow under him, or I work under him in many projects in the Mansoura University.
When you came back from your trips abroad, because it was not only the UAE, you worked in other countries as well, Arab countries as well. Did you return back to the academic field, or did you go into private? Tell me what happened after you returned from the Gulf area and the UAE.
Actually, when I go to the UAE, I was by that time, as I mentioned earlier, a quality control engineer in the scientific center in the Mansour University. So when I came back, I joined the same center, but I assigned as the project of highway engineering laboratory, which is responsible of quality control of the Middle Egypt, or the project in the Middle Egypt. Is in the outside the Middle Egypt. So by that time I decided to resume my academic study to get my PhD. So I still in the scientific center until I get my PhD in the Mansour University.
You mentioned that you did the coast, and then you then became responsible for the quality control of the Middle Egypt. Now, I'd like to ask, would roads and their design vary according to the area? Like, would Upper Egypt vary from Middle Egypt, vary from Northern Egypt, the way you'd construct a road in each area?
Yes, of course. As I told you earlier, construction or the design process is one of the entire factors that we consider upon designing a road, is the area that this road will continue. Sometimes if you, for example, design a road coming from Alexandria from in the north and go to the Aswan, for example, it will pass through the coastal area, then maybe in the desert area some, and will continue until it reaches to a mountainous area. So of course there is a difference in design and in construction also between the roads that designed to be constructed in deserts, for example, and in mountainous area.
Now, out of these many projects, which one that you felt was most challenging for you and you really had to work hard on?
I believe that in the UAE, because as I told you, we have told that from the day one you have only 18 months, not 18 months exactly. I believe that something 564 days. So they are dealing with the days, not in the months.
What about in Egypt?
In Egypt, I believe that the most interesting projects that was in the Nile Club. The club of the Mansour University that was built in island in the Nile River. It's very also a little bit complicated and dangerous because it's built in something like area inside the Nile, and I spent maybe 1.5 years to construct it. It was very difficult also.
Doctor, what about a day in your life? How would you describe a day in your life? Tell us what you're doing now.
Actually, today I'm teaching in different universities and high institutes. Of course, I'm teaching the highway engineering, and I spend sometimes for studying or making a research in academic research, and in summer I spend most of the time outside in traveling, because I'm interested in traveling and to recognize the different countries of the world.
Other than Paris, which other country you really liked?
As I told you,
you liked England and Paris.
Yeah, and also Poland. I'm very interesting, and I fall in love with Warsaw. I hope that I can revisit it again.
I'd like to know about the most rewarding moment for you in general, not just for the awards. We've discussed the awards. But in general, the most rewarding moment for you, or what an achievement that you really did that made you feel really happy?
That
Other than the UAE.
Yeah, no, I believe that the moment that my professor or the committee of the PhD discussion and evaluating, the moment that Dr. Shabrawi, which is the main supervisor, take the mic and announce that you are qualified to get you are now a PhD. I believe this is the most interesting moment in my life.
What's your advice to civil engineers in general and to engineers who have dedicated their life or specialized in road and highways?
My advice to him is to comply with the studying and field work, and don't stress on only academic or studies and forget about the field work, because if you feel the studying period is a limited period, it will be finished, and all the upcoming life will be in the field. So be careful about applying what you are studying to the field.
Finally, I'd like to ask you about your dream on personal and professional levels.
Yes, I have a lot of dreams, but the most important dreams I work on it is to promote myself in my field of study, and to visit more country in the world, especially the abnormal country. Like I plan to go to some African countries, maybe some Latin America countries, Mexico or Argentina or something like that. I hope I can apply that.
I hope all your dreams come true. Thank you very much, Engineer Dr. Alaa Mahmoud. Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you too.
Well, that was Engineer Dr. Alaa Mahmoud. We've learned about his story of success. We've learned in this episode about his life and work in the United Arab Emirates. We've learned about several projects, important national projects that he took part in. We've learned about his teaching career. We've learned about how he was awarded mega awards. Also, we've known about some of the papers he took part in or participated in international conferences, his trips and the best countries he liked. And also we've learned about his dreams. And by this we've come to the end of this episode of Story of Success. Until we meet again with a new prominent Egyptian figure, it's goodbye.